Today on All Out Brick, we're going to be taking a look at Bionicle set 8558, Cahdok and Gahdok. We're going to build the set, review it, and then give out a score. Let's get started. Hey everyone, I'm Christian from All Out Brick. Welcome to another Matanui Monday. As always, the best way to tag along with us every week is to subscribe and turn on notifications. This week, we'll be building the set Cahdok and Gahdok, which came out as a part of the 2002 line of Bionicle. Cahdok and Gahdok are the Bohrok queens responsible for controlling the swarms of Bohrok on the island of Matanui. They didn't know anything beyond the fact that they were to lead the Bohrok in their cleanse. This includes knowing nothing of the Toa Mata. After the Toa Mata stunted in with the Exo Toa armor and attacked the queens, they retaliated. The two are incredibly powerful, and the closer together they are, the stronger their powers become. Eventually, the Toa won the battle by trapping the Bohrok queens in a Toa seal. This, of course, then launched the events of late 2002, early 2003. Taking a look at the packaging, the front of the box matches the art that we saw from the Exo Toa set. We have these caverns below the island of Matanui, along with two great low-angle shots of the two Bohrok queens, Cahdok and Gahdok. Top left corner, big Bionicle logo, ages 9+, and in the bottom left we have the set number and set name. The top of the box follows the same theme as the other two large sets we saw. It's got Bionicle.com with some new features on the website, mostly just looking at the Chrono. The back of the box is pretty detailed. I think it's more detailed than we've seen so far. Of course, we see the play functions that you can perform with the two Bohrok queens, and then there's some other close-up images of pulling out this little insert of one of them. And then in the bottom left corner, we have an image of the combination model. Inside, we receive 4 bags along with the instructions and some advertisement material. This set coming in at 630 pieces makes it the 5th largest Bionicle set that we'll see throughout the entire theme. So it's probably going to be a pretty lengthy build, but let's go ahead and hop right into it. Bohrok queens are now complete. The build took an hour and 15 minutes. Something I did during the build that I highly recommend is I built them both at the same time for reasons I'll get into in a little bit with this review, but I did build them both at the same time. I think that definitely shaved at least probably 10-15 minutes off the total time. As for the models, definitely a lot of detail going on here. This is something that we really haven't seen before in terms of what they look like. If I had to pick something, I'd say the closest thing we've seen to them is Muwaka and Kane-Ra, and the similarities do stack up throughout the model, but there's just a ton of layering going on here. A lot of great details. Everywhere you look, it's like a new building technique, a ton of pieces we haven't seen before. They also managed to include some Bohrok pieces. Definitely, I think they're, for the most part, contained in the legs. But that being said, I think it's a great way to kind of tie everything together with 2002 is they took the Bohrok parts and put them in the Bohrok queens because, of course, they're ordering the swarms. It makes sense to me that they have some Bohrok parts. Speaking of those legs, I know throughout 2002 we've had a bit of hit and miss for posability. These absolutely crush it. The legs are posable in really any way you could want them. You can turn them at the ankles, you can bend them at the ankles, you can bend them at the knees. You can't bend them at the hips, but it really doesn't matter because by bending them at the knees, you're essentially bending them at the hips too. And then the ankles, there's a ton of different hinge pieces going on here. I have to hand it to them. Great job for finally getting this. I don't want to say right because they've been really close, but they finally got it to the level that we wanted to see it at. And it definitely goes a long way to making these models just that extra step better than what we've seen so far is that posable in the legs. Now, the play function here is what really reminds me of Muwaka and Kane-Ra. The play function, you pull a trigger, you hold it all in one hand, and when you pull the trigger, their head launches forward and they chomp down. It's basically exactly like Muwaka and Kane-Ra, except instead of clamping down on the handle, you're pulling the trigger like it's some sort of gun. I'd like to kind of switch it up. The function definitely works in a way that I never could have designed, and it definitely works just as good as the Muwaka Kane-Ra ones. It feels like when you're pulling it, you're pushing on the backs of the Bohrok queens just a little bit too hard. That's just my opinion. It feels like is a little stiff once you attach like the Technic gears at the top. It makes it just a little extra stiff. Before you put those in, it feels great. It's super easy. But again, when you put those on, it's just a little bit harder. I imagine for like a little kid getting it to pull all the way forwards, it might be not like a great challenge, but it might just take a little bit more oomph than you would want from this toy. Built into the play feature is something that builds on top of what we saw in Muwaka Kanera. Again, a little bit of some likeness there between this set and that, but does it better this time. With the Muwaka Kanera, remember the arms falling off when you kind of pulled those masks out? Well, this time around for Cahdok and Gahdok, when you pull out this, like, I don't know what you call it, I'm just going to call it like a piece. When you pull out that piece, it locks the Balrog Queen from like launching forwards. It can't bite. You cannot pull the trigger anymore. And that's like an ingenious thing because it absolutely disables them. Like as soon as you pull that out, like it's over, quits. Like, I don't know, it's definitely like pretty hard to pull out though. Like to get one to lodge into it and then pull it out is definitely like, it's gonna take a little while, but it's a definitive win and you really can't argue against it. And it just slaps forward. Like there's a lot of rubber bands in this set too. You'll notice that if you're building this, tons of rubber bands. I think there's probably like 8 each. There might be 8 each. It's 7 or 8 each. I know that for sure. So definitely no shortage of rubber bands. All good rubber bands like we've seen in the rest of 2002, by the way. Like I said before, the detail here is just something that I guess we haven't really fully seen, and it's kind of culminated up to this so far in 2002. There's just so much layering. The teeth are excellent. They actually use these white Technic axle pins, which I believe are actually really rare now. That I don't think they make those pieces for like a ton of sets. So it's nice to see them include them in these, because back in the day when you had to buy these, they were definitely at a premium price compared to other sets. It was nice to them to see they didn't really cut any corners. I didn't feel that at all. I know sometimes with some of these sets we feel like, hey, they kind of cut this corner. Did not feel this with the base models at all. Just tons of detail. The face, the teeth, the body, the legs are really strong, and like again, like that posability is just there. However, they're not perfect base models. There never is. There's no such thing as a perfect base model. Something that just really bothers me with these is they feel a little small. I know they're definitely big sets, and that's not like a saying that they're not big, but they feel a little smaller than they should be. These are what we're ordering the Bohrok Swarms around. Like these are like the tip top. Oh, well, besides for Makuta, of course, like these are the big villains of 2002. Why aren't they a little bit bigger? Like if you stood a Toa up to it, it's not going to be much taller than a Toa. And that doesn't give me this grand sense of like, oh my God. There's a mock that someone made of like a revamped version of these two Balrog Queens. And I'm not going to make some direct comparisons because obviously like it obviously built upon what they were. But holy smokes, that's the size that these things should have been. It would have cost a fortune, but that is the size of what they should have been. Another thing that, really, I don't like repetitive models, and these are the definition of repetitive. Well, besides the Bohrok, of course. Those are a different story. Aside from 2 pieces from like the top where like the little ears are, like the antenna on Cahdok, they're exactly the same. Like literally exact. That's why I was able to build them at the same time. I kind of looked at the box, I was like, these look the same. And yeah, sure enough, they're exactly the same besides the red and the blue, which kind of reminds me of like the new Irama, which you could get like a bunch of green pieces, make a green Balrog Queen or something like that. I don't know if you could get all those pieces in green, but you definitely could do something like that. Feel free if you want to make the mock, then it's definitely easy to do so. But just so repetitive. I mean, good God, I can't even imagine finishing the first one and then starting the second one. I'm so glad that I did them both at the same time. If you're going to build this set, absolutely I wouldn't say you have to, but very strongly consider building them at the same time. You'll feel a lot better at the end than if you finish the first one, you're like, oh boy, like literally the same thing over again. The combination model for Cahdok and Gahdok is known as the Bohrok Spider. The Bohrok Spider has absolutely no space like in the Bionicle plot there. It's never shown in like the canon, but we don't really care. It's still a combination model. So we're gonna break these base models down and go ahead and build the Bohrok Spider. Let's get to it. The Bohrok Spider is now completed. The build time for this was 45 minutes. So my first impressions with it is it's pretty cool. It's original. It definitely doesn't look anything like what we saw in like the original base models. And it's not like anything we've gotten in past sets or like in the 2001 line, like a bigger version of something. So I like that it's very original. It's not like a take on something we've seen before. There's some nice details in different areas of this model. One in specific that I really like is that on the top you see the gears intersecting, and that just looks so mechanical and really speaks to me of like, oh, like this is Bionicle. Like I really like that small little detail with the tubes coming around. It's just the combination of all that. Of course, this is a spider, so something that I think is really nice that I don't know if it was intentional or not, or if it's just like a side effect of the design, but if you drop the Bohrok Spider from like a small height, it actually bounces up and down a little bit before it comes to settle. It obviously gives that like a spiderness feel to everything. Something else that I enjoyed from the combination model is the fact that the proportions seem very well balanced. And what I mean by that is like the head doesn't make the legs look too small, the legs don't make the head look too big. Obviously they could have made the legs much bigger, but then the head would look, so I like the balancing that they did with everything. The tail isn't super long. Remember with the Moaka and Kanera combination model, that tail was enormous. I think they learned their lesson. I think they learned their lesson with that one. I mean, there wasn't as many tubes they could have used, so maybe they didn't, they got lucky, but I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt there. Some things that unfortunately came up short for me in this combination model is that, number one, there was a lot of unused pieces. Like, it didn't use, I don't even think, nearly half of the pieces. There's a ton that they didn't use, and unfortunately the ones that they didn't use were the ones that I really liked from the base model, like some of those different colored Bohrok parts and some of the extra rubber bands. Like, there's just a lot they didn't include, and I don't exactly know why. Maybe they couldn't find how to expand this spider anymore. So for that reason, I also think that it should be bigger. There were so many pieces that they could have made everything bigger. I know I talked about how they balanced the proportions and everything very well, which they did, but they could have made it so much bigger and also balanced those proportions, in my eyes at least. The biggest issue with the Bohrok Spider for me is the fact that the play function just straight up doesn't work. I mean, it's supposed to work just like the base model of Cahdok and Gahdok, where you pull the trigger and the head snaps forward and everything like that, but I think it's probably due to the fact that there's two gears that are trying to overcome that tension when it snaps down. It just doesn't snap down unless you pull really hard. And I mean, I don't think like a 9-year-old kid is gonna have a lot of fun trying to pull that like that. So I don't know, that's kind of just like friction for you right there and some tension in the rubber bands. But yeah, it just doesn't bite very well. If it did, it would be really cool. Someone have mercy on whoever steps in the way of when this thing bites down. But remember, it doesn't even show up in any of the canon, so that'll never happen. Overall, Cahdok and Gahdok, the set, it felt pretty good. I mean, it's definitely not like a wower, and it had potential to be the best of 2002, like long shot best of 2002. And I expected it to be. Like when I looked at the box art and everything like that, I was like, man, like this is gonna be a really great one. And it kind of fell under that a little bit. There were some things that were still really, really good about it, but overall, I just thought it was going to be a little better than it was. Thought the combination would kind of be better, and you know, the base models were a little smaller than I anticipated. Like, I feel like the things that are running the Bohrok Swarms should not be only a little bit taller than a Toa. Call me crazy. In terms of price, what you're going to look at nowadays is going to be quite expensive, I'm going to be honest with you. For a used version of Cahdok and Gahdok, it's going to cost you around $150, give or take a little bit. But for brand new, you're going to pay a ton. Like, I'm talking like $250, $300. I don't think that is necessarily worth it, the $300 to get this set brand new. I would be completely fine with used, unless of course the rubber bands have some extra wear or something like that. I don't see any reason to go new on this set. As for a score, I'm going to give this set an 8-1. I really wanted to go lower than this. I wanted to put it in the 7s, but there was just enough that was really good about it, and some extra like things that kind of culminated the 2002 line, like the posability in the base model legs and the new function, the snap down. There was just enough that kept it above that 8 range and not into the 7s. Now, I wouldn't put this as like a super priority set. Like, I would definitely put this as like more towards the end of 2002. It actually might be our lowest of 2002 so far. There's a couple more sets we have to get to, but I don't know. I wouldn't really like go nuts over this set and really try to shell out that $150 for the used one just yet. I would definitely shift towards the other 2002 sets first. Maybe even get some extra Bohrok instead of getting these would be my first move if I didn't have this set already. So 8-1, that's your review. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, be sure to give us a thumbs up and subscribe to be the first to see all of our future content. Also be sure to check us out on our website and on our Facebook and Instagram pages. Until next time, stay bricking.